So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for May 14th, 2020. We'll follow the agenda that was outlined in the issue, which is 863. Before we get started though, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share? If nobody else has any, I guess I just, as a reminder, still a good time to submit issues for sessions at the Collaborator Summit, which is coming up next month. Other than that, let's move on to the issues that are tagged for the agenda. The first one is 33108, replacement of unsupported versions of Windows Runtime Exit. Let's see, is there anybody who wants to jump in to that discussion?
I think this again can be bundled with the second one. I think they're the same issue.
Yep, makes sense. What's the best way to get into the discussion for those? Is it just taking a look at the issues to see? We have two different PRs, right? I guess one's the issue and one's the PR. I think there was like an alternate PR as well, wasn't there? Right, there's 33.167.176. I don't really see too much more discussion on that front. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts about what's going on that one?
While people are thinking about it, if someone could promote James,
Yep.
That would be great.
I just did that.
Thank you.
I guess it might be the thing to do might be to figure out who the key people are and get them at this meeting. Hopefully there's enough key people on TSC who are involved in that issue who can determine that things have gone as far as they're going to go and we need a vote or not or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there.
Which issue it is? Sorry,
we're talking about the one related to blocking Windows running on 7.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is I'm not gonna override the opinions of people like Joao and Bartos on this. So, and it seemed like there was a third way that seemed to garner acceptance by everybody. The last I looked at those issues.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's 33.176 was OpenJAO, so
yeah,
it just hasn't gotten any sort of approvals so far, and not any discussions since last week.
Environment variable, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I raised kind of a concern about that, but I think I'm the only one, and I'm happy with the explanations, the approach on that. So, I mean, if we don't get any objections on that, I mean, it definitely needs review and sign off. But I'm not seeing anyone strongly objecting to that approach.
Yeah, neither have I, right? So I'd be tempted to say that unless people object, 33.176 seems to be the way to go.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any objections to that here?
Nope.
I guess the only thing would be it adds an environment variable versus a command line, and I guess like the command line, we have the standard approach of being able to get a command line into the environment variable.
Yeah, using that option.
Using that option. That's the only question I might have. Anyway, I can add that to the issue, but it sounds like 31, we discussed, and seems like people are happy with 33.117. we can get that unlocked. Okay, any more? Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, this does bring up a longstanding issue with the technical steering committee, which is that we have less Windows expertise and representation than we should. And I don't know what to do about that, but I just wanted to blurt that out, state the elephant in the room.
Yeah, I don't know the solution to that either.
I tend to agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
I'll just mention that Shelley works at Microsoft, but that's about all I can say.
Yeah.
Well, is it, you know, Shelley with Microsoft? I mean, I'm developing on Windows full time now, so I'm at least having visibility to the issues that we have. But it would be good. I think I would actually have to say it's less Windows coverage, more libuv. Like we don't have very many folks on TSC that are really knowledgeable about the low level kind of libuv abstractions and stuff that are there. So
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have Colin.
yeah, I mean it's like I said, we have some, we don't have enough. So
Okay, any more discussion on that one before we move to the next one? If not, the next one that was tagged was process throw exception on unhandled rejections equals default. I've seen that there is progress on the survey, which was the next step, and Matthias commented that, you know, could use some more reviews and approvals by the TSC members. I think, I'm not sure if there's anything more to discuss on that one until the survey goes out, but does anybody have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think Benjamin left a whole bunch of comments in the last 24 hours or so. So, you know, conversation's still happening. I mean, it's an unfortunately slow process, but necessarily so. And I don't think it's the end of the world that it's slow. So
No, and
as long as it's inching forward, I'm happy.
Yeah, when I read through it, it seemed like it was, you know, going in the right direction and comments were being worked out. So yeah, I think we've got forward progress, which is good. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is regression in 14.1.0. std out is sometimes empty. 33.166. I think Matteo, you'd added this one to the agenda.
Yep, I did. Yes, I did. So the problem with this one is that we have broken 14.1 on certain class of Windows machines. Now, this goes into the fanciest, like this was one of the hardest bugs ever we tracked down. Essentially, it boils down to if we build something, if we do an old build on a machine with Visual Studio 2019 installed, that build will fail on a machine with VS Code, VS Studio, so Visual Studio 2017. Possibly there's also some other variable in the mix, like if the machine is under power or who understand what's going on. All of these was tracked to us. So all of these, however, a significant chunk of those conditions are true for GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions on Windows are failing right now with 14.1 on several projects. I have a few of mine that are failing, and most notably, this came to be from the JS community. So Babel is failing, like there is significant amount of failures around. Boils down to the problem that we have lacking Windows expertise, because nobody has a clue on how to better understand what's happening. So, and how to resolve the problem. And the only solution right now seems to do a revert of that commit that caused the problem. Note that that commit it's not really like, it does not look like it should affect this at all. So the issue is that there is no standard output. However, looking at the code, there's nothing in that commit that touch standard output. However, everything that has been these failures touches that module somehow. So it's related to code coverages, tests, and utilities of that kind. So, yeah.
So is there opposition to the revert?
No, not really, but it's a significant enough problem that I think it's good that we talk about it, because essentially we're doing a revert because we have no clue what to do. Like it's and that feature is wanted, so I don't like there is that, and because we do not understand the bug, we cannot put a test in it. So you see the problem, hopefully. So
Yeah, I
mean,
just don't
where the
see a solution.
conversation is.
yeah, the
Somewhere-
problem is we don't have the solution. So that's the.
I think this, but I mean, I'd agree that, yeah, okay, it's not ideal that we have to revert, but I think that's the right thing in the short term, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what it is. As long as we don't stop investigating what actually caused the issue.
Yeah, the problem is we don't know even how to do the work.
Yeah.
Is anybody had a clue on how to use that? That would be very good to know.
I guess, only thing that comes to mind is like, can we reach out to Microsoft for help?
I have a question about this. The reverse commit introduces some feature, correct?
Yes.
But the things that fail, do they use this feature or not?
It doesn't, but it passed through the code. It passed through code touched by that feature, by that commit.
Yes, but if they don't depend on this feature specifically, perhaps we can split that into two code paths, one of which would be called if that feature is used, and one of which would be called if that feature is not used. I'm not sure how viable is it that. I still have to look at the code.
It's not really viable, at least from my understanding of what this does. So it doesn't seem to be viable.
I'll take a look at that. I think that perhaps if we can detect if that feature is used or not, and depending on that.
It's used. Let me tell, it's used.
Okay.
So it's not used. So that feature is not used, but it's not used, but it passed through that code.
Yes. So, what I'm thinking is that we perhaps can call different code paths depending on if that feature is used or not, and in that case, it will be this feature that will be flaky, and not the whole module that will be flaky.
It's not the module, it's Node.js, but yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about the VM module, which seems like on Windows, as I understood. Another question: is there a clean way to test for this or not? Like, how do I set up that?
You ask Trot to make you a build, or Targos, they make you a build, and I test it on my machine.
Okay, thank you.
But I guess your machine, it has to be a particular. I think what you said is your machine just isn't any Windows machine, right? It's a particular one.
Totally. James' machine is too new. So if the machine is old, it has the problem. If it's new, it's not. It does.
I've not been able to. I can't recreate on any of my Windows machines. I haven't been able to find an old enough one to be able to test it on. So good luck.
I think that the issue mentions VirtualBox. Can we reproduce this in VirtualBox? And if yes, does that?
I tried mine, and it didn't work. I've tried multiple kind of VM scenarios and I couldn't do it either.
Okay, that sounds bad.
This is sounding like maybe we ought to revisit that other issue about stopping Windows on old, old unsupported machines. Not that these machines aren't supported, but
Yeah,
I'd
those
like
are supported. But
Could we ask DevSnack to maybe try to do his change without changing the module loader? Because I don't know if it's because of the change to the module loader that there is this issue, but it seems more likely than because of the change in VM.
yeah, that would be my take. Yes, that would be my take on the module loader.
Yeah.
If it's definitely that.
So is that something we want to ask / look into and then
Yeah,
come
I
back
think
to
we-
this
we
next
do
week,
need
or
to-
is this something we need to?
I
move
would
quicker?
recommend the revert anyway, and then we can ship that, and then we can ask the DevSnack to do that, and then we try to build that commit in like triple test that commit, so that with the usual crazy way. So we did a distributed bisect, by the way. So essentially,
That was wild.
it was fantastic. Distributed bisecting of node is so great.
All right. I think that's that approach sounds like the reasonable way to go to me. Revert and see if we can get the feature that DevSnack implemented Gus implemented to be implemented without changing the module loader, or to more minimally change the module loader.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense to me. Anybody have any concerns over that?
No.
So do you need anything, Matteo, in terms of?
No, I don't.
In terms of
For
getting
me, it
the
was
revert
more
done?
about
No?
show. I don't think so. There is no objection. DevSnack is not objecting. So.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not objecting, but there were a few things I think that they wanted us to try. Trying some differences between the 2019 and 2017, and exploring a few more things. But there's just, I don't think I've seen any objection at all to actually doing the revert in the short term.
Okay, so I think basically, is there any other discussion on that one before we move on to the next issue?
We can move on.
Okay. Okay, so the next issue is Node.js Future Directions. Any interest in Online Person Summit? I just left this on the agenda as a last reminder that I did submit a session for the Collaborator Summit. So if people have thoughts or whatever, be good to prepare for the summit, the session there. Otherwise, I'm going to take it off the agenda because until we have that, I don't think there's anything more to talk about.
Can we briefly talk about a somewhat related topic?
Sure.
There was a discussion opened by Tierney, encouraged by Matteo in the TSC tracker, raising this for folks to see it, about reviewing the contribution process and policies and whether there's anything there that we need to change, simplify, that kind of thing. I think it's an excellent opportunity to just kind of step back and take a look at how we're doing on things. One of the things that I'm considering, that actually I have a proposal there in the form of a PR, is it might be time for us to actually do a contributor survey to kind of see where all of our contributors are at in terms of how happy they are with our process. I took a first stab at a set of questions based on the 2019 Kubernetes project contributor survey, and just kind of modified it and made it more specific to Node. But folks think that that's a good idea, it'd be great to have some review of the questions. If folks think it's a terrible idea, please mention that in the PR and we'll work through it.
Certainly, if we have a champion to move it forward, it sounds like it's good to
Yeah.
get more
And
data,
I'll,
more information.
I'll champion it if there's interest in moving it forward.
Any other questions, comments before we move on to the next one? Okay, if not, the next one is tag 503 in the admin repo, approval to engage to enable GitHub pages for Node add-on examples. That one I added as an FYI. The Node add-on examples wants to use the GitHub pages to host some sort of the work, things, workshops. So basically as an extension to the examples themselves. I don't think we have anywhere in our governance whether you need to ask, like a team needs to do this. Tierney had made a comment that, maybe it should be able that teams can do this on. If that's the case, we should probably document it otherwise. But I put this on the agenda just because there wasn't a lot of comments in the issue itself. And unless there's any objections in there, I'll assume by the end of the week that, we can go ahead and do that. Any questions, comments before we move on to that? Any feedback here from whether we should, need a request versus just, teams can turn on GitHub pages if they want to for the repos?
I'd say that's up to that repo. Yeah, if that's something we want to do, then go for it.
Yeah, I would prefer people file an issue. I don't think we need to ever talk about it at the TSC meeting, but I would prefer an issue in the admin repo because we already have one translation group that hosts their own localization through GitHub pages, and I wouldn't want I think it's a challenge for the internationalization effort. And so I wouldn't want that to proliferate. So I would prefer before turning on GitHub pages if we get an issue in the admin repo, but it can be treated like any other, create a repo, wait 72 hours, you can do it, same, just like that.
So I think one thing worth mentioning here too, if we're doing any sort of public facing website that isn't the repo, we might be getting into weird spaces with GDPR or with like whether or not we have the rights to host and share the things that we're doing. For example, like one of the pull requests that came in for like Node.js.dev included a thank you to like companies who support Node and had their logos and stuff, which is probably not okay without those companies' permissions, and that's something we're working on and fixing. But like having at least some level of review of the content is probably a good idea, because we don't want to find ourselves in any sort of murky territory.
And
And
at the same time, when we spin up a working group and give them authority over a particular area in repo, the TSC is explicitly taking itself out of that oversight. So
I mean, only if we explicitly give them, charter them with administrative, responsibility over their repo, which I don't believe we typically do.
Which also, like, one on there too is generally like some of these things we're talking about, whether it's website or internationalization, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, are not TSC chartered working groups anymore. But like, honestly, what may be missing here, at least to cover my concern here. Sorry, was I breaking up there?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, but you are listenable.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm using some new headphones. They're betraying me. I think the concerns that I have here, though, may make sense as broader project and potentially even foundation policy around websites in general, not specific to GitHub pages, So maybe that is also an ask that we can make to Foundation Legal. I'm not a lawyer. I just see potential risk here. So it might be like, now the flip side is I don't know if we want to open that Pandora's box. But like my concern is purely from like a legal hosting perspective, and making sure that even if it's a checklist, people who are making websites have, are being cognizant of it, because it's very easy to have good intentions with bad results here.
How about,
For the, go ahead, James.
How about one approach, instead of taking it from the point of view of we need a policy for this, it's here are the kind of the best practice guidelines, things to consider. That, if you're going to do this, give us a heads up, but it doesn't require approval. But these are the kinds of changes that might need to be reviewed.
I mean, that's effectively what opening an admin issue is. And I'm going to actually, that segues nicely into what Sam posted in the chat, which I want to read for the benefit of viewers and for the record, which is that I think an admin issue is good practice. They get rubber stamped, but I think some kind of org-wide notification is a good idea. And that's basically where I'm coming from too, for the record.
Okay. I just don't want to see policy when we don't need it.
Yeah, I think the overhead is, to be honest, I mean, it's small, and the value of knowing, that this is happening, not necessarily saying, because I don't see it being blocked, but like, I think the FYI, just as was very well put, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's also consistent with, like we don't have to draft a new policy for this, because like basically the GitHub policy that we already have is like, if you're doing anything significant, please open an issue and let it sit there for 72 hours and then go ahead and do it. It's kind of like the default for most things. There's a few exceptions, but for the most part, if you're doing something, that's what you do.
I think just making this explicit, like if you want to turn on X, this is what you do, right? Like we should mention GitHub Pages as one of those in that policy, because at this point it was like, I don't know, but I'll do it anyway. So.
Yeah, and then kind of adding to what James was saying, I think it would be prudent for us to do an ask to the foundation and Foundation's council to just get maybe a list of best practices for any web properties. So to your point, James, I think it's good to not make this a policy. But if we did have a list of like, hey, here are the things that could get you in trouble, that would be good to have like really clear.
Yeah.
And that actually is not, I think, in any way specific to, and I could be wrong, to these GitHub Pages, because they probably apply to GitHub, our GitHub repos as well, right?
Anywhere that we would publicly display logos from any company on any Node.js related asset.
I'm more like, on any Node.js asset is the key part. Like we already have GitHub, so when we give somebody a repo, that same guidance would apply, because you could land stuff there.
Like, I can't just check in any logo I want into a GitHub repo, whether it's displayed on a website or not.
Yeah, and then I think how we handle personally identified information, PII, also plays into this. And to your point, this could affect forms or notes or like anything that we're doing. Websites probably have additional needs from a GDPR perspective that like our repos don't, because we kind of like get that for free through GitHub. We're not hosting like content there. But these are just like, I mean, I'm probably being slightly paranoid, and the amount of time I've spent in enterprises is probably showing right now. But I just would be rather safe than sorry. We're part of a large foundation and there is risk there.
I propose we move on to the next topic.
Yep, I'd agree. Any objections to moving on?
Nope.
Okay, so the next issue is audit Google account access. That's number 389. We did discuss this last week. Brian was on the call. Luckily, he volunteered to basically be the one to make sure it happens, which is good. And he's got a proposal, which is basically to, bring a list of the people with access, work with the TSC and ComCom chairs to filter, people that, are potentially no longer active. And then anybody who's, potentially going to be, I guess any names not tagged in the first round will be distributed to the broader TSC and ComCom for consideration. And then if they're not tagged in that round, they'll be pruned from the account. So basically it's a, hey, yeah, I know these people are still active. And if either the, the TC or ComCom who does the first pass or the other TC or ComCom members in the second pass don't tag somebody as, yeah, we know they're still active, they'd be pruned. And of course could be easily added back in if we make a mistake.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's, anything else, comments, questions on that? Okay, if not, let's move on. In terms of strategic initiatives from the minutes, I don't have any updates on the build resources since last week. Michael has added some stuff on currency, if you want to go through that.
Yes. So I landed V8 8.3, I think 2 days ago on master. I opened the backport PR for 14. It's looking good. It would be nice if some people who know C++ could look at the v8.h diff so that there's nothing breaking on the API and ABI side. It's going to be released by the V8 team next week, so we should be able to have it in 14 in the next minor that happens after that. And about Canary, there's one issue that we have now with Visual Studio 2017. It doesn't compile. And I discovered that this morning, so I haven't pinged anyone yet, but I will ping the Windows team. I thought about maybe proposing to actually drop support for Visual Studio 2017, but I don't know if we can do that this early. I don't know what's the policy for that.
Yeah. I don't think we have a policy for it. I would be concerned on some older versions of Windows. There are challenges with building with 2019 that I've seen. So whether we care or not, I don't know. But yeah, we just have to be careful. And I would almost, unless we can prove that it's not going to break something, I would almost make it a Semper Major if we drop support for 2017.
Right, I guess even if it was Semper Major, though, the question would be, is it too early for that being in master for 15?
Yeah.
We should look at,
that would be the question. Can we do it for 15?
do we know when it goes out of support by Microsoft? Like generally, I'm not a Windows expert here, but generally what we look at for the support is we ask ourselves, how long will 15 be supported? And if it'll go out of end of life before 15 is, while 15 is still supported, then we would definitely drop it, because we don't want to drop it and then get off the horse in the middle of the running.
Yes, the 2017 customers remain on the RTW version will continue to be supported until January 2020.
Needless to say, it passed.
But
So if support ends January 2020, it should actually be dropped for 15. Maybe not 15, maybe 16, I guess.
Well, 15, we haven't released 15, have we? I mean,
No, I know, but 15, yeah, okay. And I guess 15 would be supported beyond January 2020.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is 2017 still works for a large number of people. And we just, even if Microsoft's not supporting it, I'm not seeing a huge reason not to continue, at least having some support through 15.
Well, it's more the challenges around, can we support it? For 15, maybe, it's a few months, but for 16, it's, a couple of years.
If V8 ends up going, kind of pushing it off, pushing us off of it, then
V8 already pushed us off of Visual Studio. They don't support it. They use Clang.
Yeah.
Should we just use Clang instead? This was mentioned already several times, also in the other issue about we should probably build on Windows with Clang instead.
Yeah.
And
To be
it
honest,
might
I
have
prefer
the
that overall.
problem that we are seeing completely go away because it's like should be Clang based.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. So.
Yeah, I will ping the Windows team anyway because I would like to be able to update V8 another time in 14, and we will need to support Visual Studio in 14 anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Biggest concern I have is around build tool chains for native add-ons, by the way. I mean, I'm not too concerned about Node itself. I know there's a lot of folks that are using VS Studio for native add-on builds. And I don't want to disrupt them too much unnecessarily.
Yeah. I guess in that case, it's only when you compile against a newer version of Node where you would get the problems, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, anything else more, Michael, that you want to add?
No, that's all.
Okay. Anything on the, so let's look at the other initiatives. Anything you want to add, Myles, on modules?
Yeah, sorry, the delay there. So a couple different things worth mentioning. So one would be we've landed the PR to unflag modules in 12.17. Thank you, Targos, for putting that together. And then we've got, just we're doing some QA. So if anyone has time to boot up the RC and play around with it, that would be great. It should be, for the most part, and as close as we can, mimicking what is on 14. I think there's like a couple PRs, like some changes to errors and whatnot that have not landed yet in a 14 release, so those won't get into 12 yet, but they'll get picked up in the next December patch. The biggest change that is currently being discussed, which could use help with, is a top level await. So upstream in V8, top level await is for the most part stable. All of the current blocking things that were blocking landing it into Chrome proper have been landed aside from the Blink integration. So there is some integration that's necessary for hosts to handle top level await and remain spec compliant. There is a PR that is open from Gus that does this for Node. It is putting it behind a flag -- experimental top level await, which is an alias for Harmony top level await. There was a need to make some small changes to the options parser to enable this. So basically, we need those two flags to mean the same thing, and the way in which V8 gets the options flag is a little convoluted. So he's made some changes to the options parser to kind of allow this to work the way that we want it to. The top level await side of the PR seems to be good. You know, myself and other members of the team have signed off on it, but it does need review of the options parser changes. We would like to land this preferably before next week's 14.x release so that we can get this out and get people testing it. You know, it's like ready to go, and I think people would be really excited to play with it. The plan is to not unflag it in Node until it would land unflagged in Chrome. We don't have an exact timeline on that, but the PRs that are, you know, enabling that in Blink, like the CL, I mean, I think the main one has landed. So it's, you know, mostly about stability and testing stuff. So I think it's appropriate for us to similarly land it behind a flag in Node so people can test it. And if there are problems, you know, open those issues against us so we can get things fixed upstream before it goes out in Chrome. Any questions or thoughts on that? Cool, thank you.
Behind the flag. Good thing.
Anything you want to add this week on Core Promise APIs, Matteo?
Nothing new.
Okay. Quick, anything on that front, James?
Just ongoing. Yeah, Sam had requested that we go through and pull out some of the bits in the main quick PR to make it easier to review. I've been doing that incrementally instead of doing it all in one big old go, which would just add chaos. I've been doing like 1 or 2 a week. So it's taking a bit more time, but we are making progress. The main quick PR itself, it's getting to be fairly just the parts that touch on quick or are required by quick. It should be a lot easier to review overall, but as Trot may be able to attest to, it's really complicated. And so getting a walkthrough is something I'm very happy to give you guys a walkthrough of what the PR is, how it's structured, and the overall considerations for the protocol itself, to give some context on actually doing a review and being able to make some judgments about it. It will be for quite some time behind a flag, a compile time flag. So no part of the quick impl would go out in a release, even if it lands in master. I would say at least until sometime in 15. But we'll have to figure it out from there. So.
Okay, I think that's our strategic initiatives, and we do want to reserve a little bit of time for the private section. So at this point, I suggest we close out the public meeting unless anybody has anything else we need to discuss.
Nope.
Okay.